A very good morning to all of you boys. We know that we are really undergoing through a very tough time, and it's a time exactly that we need to stay at our homes, and therefore it's important for you as well to be fixed to your homes and just carry on with your studies. Now, here I am, your SST teacher, to just talk a bit about the chapter that is something called as the establishment of the company power. This is the first chapter that is to be really taught to you in the class. But unexpectedly, we are not in the class, so therefore, this is something kind of a lecture that is going to you very much online. Now, boys, you know that around the world, we did have different many kinds of expeditions. We did have many different kinds of the voyages, right, taken by the great explorers. But you know what happened in the course? There were only just four European nations who were actually able to dominate themselves around the world in a very, very aggressive manner. And these nations were number one, the Dutch, number two, the French, number three was exactly the Britishers, and number four we had exactly that was said to be as the Portuguese. Now, Portuguese were the first people to very much come to a country in the terms of the trading business. But in the last, you see in the chapter, as it says, that the Britishers were the one the most successful. Now, the point is that why is it so that the Britishers were more successful in compared to the other European powers? The simple reason is that they had the best of the military warfare equipments. Again, I repeat, what this means is that they were the people who were the most technologically developed, and therefore they had the best of the warfare equipments. Means exactly all the kinds of the technologies utilized in the war, they had the of the best means. In the country, as you see exactly, the Britishers, they came with the concept that we only have to remain as the traders. Traders means exactly the people who are only involved in a kind of a trading business. I remember exactly when the notes last time when I sent it to you, there's a word something written there called as mercantilism. What exactly this word means? Mercantilism means a kind of a profession, a kind of a business, a kind of a trading that is very much exactly a power, a very powerful country is involved in the other nations. At the same time, the purpose could be exactly to trade, but you know exactly in the mind deep within, there's a secrecy. What is secrecy? The secrecy involved is that they actually are planning to be a colonist. That's what happened with the Britishers. The Britishers, they came to this country with the purpose of the trading, but gradually this changed into formed themselves into a colonialist power. I hope you understand the meaning of the word colonialist power, a kind of a power that is very much involved in the plundering of a nation, at the same time making its native people as its own slaves. And whatever business it does for its own profit. As we see in the chapter, as you go on, the book also mentions about the Carnatic Wars. Now, what exactly were the Carnatic Wars? It was a kind of a war that was involved between the two nations, not our nation, but exactly the two nations. Number one was the France, and number two was the Britain. Because exactly you see in the chapter that these are the two nations that were the most powerful nations in those times, and therefore their very much aggressive agenda was to conquer upon India. But you see that exactly out of the three wars, the three Carnatic wars that we had it, finally what happened is that the Britishers were the one only to be the most successful. The reason, simple reason, is that they were the ones to have the best of the war equipments, and therefore what happened exactly, they were the one to crush over the French people and finally take over the annexation of the entire country that was India. Boys, as you see in the chapter, it also talks about there are two battles in the country that really has played a very important role in the aggressive annexation of India. Again, I repeat, there are two battles that is mentioned about in the chapter that says that the Britishers really had played a very aggressive annexation policy in capture of the country, and those two battles were number one, the Battle of the Plassey, and number two, the Battle of the Buxar. Now, why is it so that the Battle of Plassey is so important for the country or for the Britishers? The reason is that because through the Battle of Plassey, they were only able to capture the whole of the Bengal, and that time the most richest part of the country in terms of the revenue collection. Finally, what happened exactly as they move on with their aggressive policy of annexation, they further from the Battle of Plassey, they move on to the Battle of the Buxar. Battle of Buxar was again important because finally what happened, it enhanced their power upon the nation. How exactly? In the Battle of Plassey, the capture was majorly upon only the dominant part of the Bengal, but through the Battle of Plassey, the Battle of Buxar, sorry, they were able to exactly cover upon the entire of the northern part of the country, covering the Orissa district, the Orissa province, the Bihar province, and as well as the Bengal province. So that means they really increased their power up to a lot extent. Boys, we know that exactly the country we easily very much fell into the hands of the Britishers. There were some reasons, right? Number one reason was that exactly that we didn't have very good technologically well devised warfare equipments. Number two was that there was lack of unity among the leaders. Exactly, we did have leaders in the country in those times. Like, for example, if you go to the north, you find a separate leader. You go to the south, you find separate leader. In the west, you have separate leaders. But there was nothing kind of any kind of integration between these three, four leaders, the important leaders that we had in those times in the countries, to make this country war into a very unified war. So, exactly, lack of central leadership was one of the reasons, exactly because of which what happened is that there was no unification, and therefore finally we very much easily fell into the hands of the Britishers. Apart from this, it says that in our country that we were really the people with the rulers who were really, really very weak. Exactly what happens is that by the time 1857, the first mutiny battle happens in our country, they very much take only Bahadur Shah Zafar as the final leader. But exactly how weak he was. And therefore, these are the factors that has really, really played a very important role in putting down India to the feet of the Britishers. Besides this, you should also understand that there were some of the policies that were really very much followed in the country by the Britishers. What kind of policies? Very shrewd, very cunning, at the same time very kind of the policies which were very wicked of the nature. At the same time, the policies were only meant to put down the Indians to their own feet. Now, what are the policies? Remember, the chapter very much well in a detailed manner speaks about the three policies. What are those? Number one, the doctrine of lapse. Number two, you have the dual form of the government. At the same time, it also talks about the subsidiary alliance. When you read the chapter, you come to know exactly how these policies were really very much so aggressive in nature, at the same time very cunning, very shrewd, and very cleverly formed, to very much allow the rulers of the country to denounce the empire into the hands of the Britishers. I have already sent you the notes, and the notes very much basically in detail talks about all these policies. But in brief, I just want to say exactly the two policies which are very important for your examination at the same time for your course. Number one, it says the doctrine of lapse. Now, what this policy says, that if a king, if a ruler does not have any heir, or does not have any exactly son or a daughter, what is going to happen? Automatically, this whole province of the kingdom that is under the ruler or the king having no heir will very much surpass into the hands of the Britishers. Number one. Okay, fine. But exactly what happened is that it was a kind of a policy that was really, really very much cruelly, very much wickedly made. The only reason was that to make the Britishers to be more powerful, at the same time to get and usurp the entire kingdom as soon as possible in a very, very fast manner. There's another policy that the chapter talks about, the subsidiary alliance. What is the subsidiary alliance? That we, the Britishers, are ready to give you all the administrative help. We, the Britishers, are ready to give you all the support of our military warfare equipments, only if you let us have control upon your kingdom as in the form of the Diwani rights. So I understand exactly when the Diwani rights are now being handed over to the Britishers, obviously it's going to become now more painful, more difficult for the local people, the natives, to exactly live in a very, very happy and a peaceful manner. So therefore, these are the policies which really very much decried upon them. Boys, this chapter actually really gives us one lesson, that the more integrated, the more unified we are, exactly what's going to happen. We are never ever going to let lose our nation or our kingdoms. The only reason that we lost our nation into the hands of a colonialist empire, into the hands of the imperialist empire, the reason was that exactly that we never were unified. We never had that kind of the nationalistic spirit. So better now start now from today onwards. Let's have a pledge that we are going to have a nationalistic spirit. At the same time, let this nation grow and prosper as one. Thank you.